poet sang this song to me. There was a message in his melody, sweetest lyrics that I ever heard. There's a message in the songs of birds. He said, tomorrow is another day, living is the only way tomorrow's gonna ever come. Listen to the words of the song. Everything gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be
Greetings and welcome to A Sip of Inspiration. My name is Stephanie Wilson-Coleman and I am your host for tonight's edition, which is the second edition of Local Heroes. Joining me is three of my closest friends, some of which I've known before, some I've just met. You never meet any strangers, for I believe that everything is done in divine order. Before I introduce my guests, though, I want to remind you all that, as usual, this show will be packed with information. So get your pads, your paper, your pencils, your pens, whatever you need, so that you can prepare your questions and that you can write information. You know, on A Sip of Inspiration, my job is to inspire, uplift, and motivate. And this time I've brought along some friends. As you know, it takes a village to raise a child, and we will prove that to you tonight. Tonight we will deal with ex-offenders and their reentry into society. As you know, it cannot be done alone, and it is not impossible, and I've got some people here that will help us with it. Starting with Tony Lowry, who's with the Safer Foundation, and as I introduce them, they'll get an opportunity to tell you about themselves. Then there's Sherelle Abel, who's with Hope Incorporated. As a matter of fact, she's the founder and CEO. And there's George Williams, who is Vice President of Task. I want to thank you all for joining me tonight, and I'm going to turn it over to you, starting with Tony. Tell us about what you do, why you do it, more importantly, and how many people have you helped?
Okay, thanks a lot, Stephanie. It's really a pleasure for me to appear on your show again, talking about this very critical topic. My current position, I'm the Director of Policy at Safer Foundation. Safer Foundation sees approximately 12 to 14,000 people a year with criminal records, providing educational services, job training, and job placement services. As the Director of Policy and Advocacy at SAFER, my job is to interface with legislators on a state and federal level to try and break down what we call barriers to employment for people with criminal records. As a lot of people may or may not know, a person returning home from prison or who just has a criminal record who's never been to prison face monumental barriers as far as trying to gain employment and trying to reclaim their lives. What we do as SAFER is to try and interface with legislators, administrators to relieve the burden of the criminal record so that people can have opportunities to have employment, which will again help rebuild themselves, their families, and hopefully their communities.
And sure.
Again, my name is Sherelle Abel. I am founder and CEO of Hope Inc. Midwest. I am an ex-offender. And what we do is that we provide similar services that SAFER has just spoken about with reentry to women coming home back into the communities. We also work with caregivers of children moms that are incarcerated, as well as going back into the Illinois Department of Corrections and providing service to the 2,700 women that are incarcerated, to help them prepare through job summits, training programs, to prepare them for the reentry.
And George.
Yes, good evening. My name is George Williams. I'm Vice President of Community and Government Affairs for TASC. I've been at TASC since 1990. TASC was founded in 1976, and we are statewide. We provide clinical case management to we see about 25,000 men and women across the state. We have 10 area offices around the state. We also see ourselves as advocates for our constituents, our neighbors, our sisters and brothers, and nieces and nephews that find themselves coming in and out of the criminal justice systems. Our program, TAS has a special option here, and that is that if you are charged with a nonviolent crime, you can petition the court and ask for a TAS assessment, and the court is mandated. It's not optional. The court is mandated to call in TAS, and we will come in and provide that assessment to see if you are eligible for our services, and then we'll place you in the appropriate level of services, and we'll then have a responsibility of reporting back to the courts and making sure that you are navigate that system in a way that's very successful. And so we've been doing it since 1976, and so we think that we've been very effective in that service, the clinical services, but also the advocacy, how we help them to understand what are their rights, their roles, and their responsibilities once that option is accepted.
Now, you've been doing this since 1990. What about you, Sherelle and Tony?
I became founded in 2002.
Okay.
So soon I will be celebrating 10 years of reentry.
The Safer Foundation was founded in 1972. We currently been serving people, specifically people with criminal records, for the past 38 years.
So we've got a lot of years of experience here. What's the passion behind this? Why how did you choose this, or did it choose you?
I think it kind of chose me. You know, when I first embarked out into my career pathway, this was not the field that I chose per se. I had wanted to go and get me a degree in computer science.
Okay.
And I switched in mid-course, and I found I had a desire to do this work. As a matter of fact, I too am an ex-offender. I was released from the Department of Correction March the 15th of 1984. And so somehow my life, my past life, my present life, and my future life just led me into this pathway. And I thought that I found myself in the right place at the right time, trying to do the right things, and in working towards helping to restore the harm that I did while I was in that world, and then also helping folks to find their pathway to take their rightful places in their respective communities as well.
What about you? What's the passion?
Well, my passion is from experience, I would say. Being an ex-offender, due to the trauma of addiction led to my incarceration. In the beginning in 1987, being a mother that abandoned her son at birth during her incarceration in 1987 and constantly repeated the cycle. Came to myself in 2000 where a spirit spoke to me, my inner spirit, and says, you've got to do something when you return home after receiving a 20-year sentence due to a drug addiction. So when I came home from prison, May 7th of 2002, I was determined to do something different. Thank God I had family to back me. My mom opened her doors. I re-entered, and I had spoken to my grandmother. I was like, you know, Granny, I want to do something different. And she says, tell me what you want to do, baby. I said, you know, God spoke to my spirit, and I want to work with women like me. Of course, I was just a GED graduate. I had received a cosmetology certificate during my time of incarceration, as well as culinary arts. I had taken some college courses, but I had not actually completed anything.
Okay.
And there was a fulfillment in me that I knew was there, but yet I was missing it. So I said, you know, I'm going to work with women like me, for one, something that I have experienced after doing 9 years and 6 months in the Illinois Department of Corrections, after giving birth to my son in the Illinois Department of Corrections, my mother becoming a caregiver. It was everything that I knew about. So I founded Hope Inc. Midwest. I became a 501c3 in 2005 after working continuously. I actually started it in my mother's home, bringing extra women there, and we started as a support group.
For me, Stephanie, also I am a person with a criminal record. Started this journey in 1993, working in public housing communities with Dr. Carol Adams with the Cadre program. In public housing communities that were terribly generational cycles of poverty, incarceration, and abuse. Came in as far as standing up and understanding and passing on information to my people. Didn't have a clue as to the desperate situation that was there, but the more information I got, the more education I got, it just created that fire and that passion. Coming out of public housing and went into another arena of healthcare advocacy, the same disparities, discrimination. Was fortunate enough to work with a state senator, Barack Obama, who became our president of the United States, to provide information for our people who were terribly impacted by discrimination in healthcare. Opportunity arose to come in the Safer Foundation, and again, I didn't know the impact, the total impact of the criminal record. I knew how it had impacted my life, but I didn't know the systematic barriers, the systematic orchestration, the disenfranchised, and the new Jim Crow that had been established in our communities to prevent our people from having an opportunity to successfully return to their communities. As far as getting that information, it just continues to create a burning fire and desire to pass on that information to my communities. I'm really, truly blessed to be on the panel tonight with George Williams, who a lot of people don't know. George is a very humble person. George was one of the original architects of the Second Chance, which brought $100 million to communities in the United States to provide services and support for people with criminal records. As far as doing this for years and seeing the people and impacting and doing legislation and just understanding that the fight is fixed and trying to educate my people to let them know that for us to change, that we have to stand up and be involved. So that's that continuous burning fire that I think moves me forward.
Now, it seems when you read the papers, there are large numbers of ex-offenders that are returning back to society without any skills, without any hope, without any place to go. And the problem seems to be escalating, and it has now been defined as the new Jim Crow in the African American and in the minority community. How do you ready an ex-offender who is returning back to society to face all of that? It seems like you're putting them back into the frying pan, because they're supposed to get new friends, but they go back to the same neighborhood, and you can't make new friends in the same neighborhood. You're supposed to get jobs, but there's that question on that application that you can't say no to, the one about your criminal record. So how do you get started? What's your first steps?
Well, the planning has to start inside the institution. We like to talk about a seamless transition from inside to outside, where there has to be a skills assessment. There has to be coordination of services with TASK, with Hope Inc. Midwest, who comes into the institution and start that thinking, that change, that psychic change that has to happen inside before a person ever comes out. I like to say that fresh air causes amnesia, because as soon as a person comes out, all of the praise the Lord's and I'm going to do the right thing and everything is a lot of times easily forgotten. I've seen, as far as just doing programs inside and outside the institution, is that when we come in, as far as being people with criminal records, we're that vision of hope. We're that vision that if I do the right thing, I can make it. But when you look at the communities where people return to, I just got some information from IDOC just last week, and I was shocked to see that 3% of the entire IDOC population comes out of 2 zip codes in Austin, and truly shocking. So when you got people coming back into the communities, that Pookie and Tay Tay are still on the corners, and they're not getting the support that's needed to change their lives, it is a troubling generational cycle of incarceration. But the work has to start on the inside.
And you start on the inside, don't you, Sherelle?
Yes, I love starting on the inside because it's where I came from.
Okay.
And what we do is that we go into the prisons and we present to the women that believe in second chances, and everyone there has a second chance beyond a shadow of a doubt. We encourage them to sign up for any programs that the Illinois Department of Corrections may offer them, whether it's getting a GED, going to school, getting some type of degree, taking any type of program that they offer as far as support groups, anger management. They have a program that is called Parole School, and what it does is that it prepares them for when they re-enter back into society. So we go there and we offer those type of suggestions to them, and we tell them that it works. We take other ex-offender women with us that has also walked the same path that they have walked and have been successful. What it does is that when we bring them hope, and when we are an organization that is there for them when they parole. So when they parole, we're looking for them. If they don't call us, we call them.
Okay.
Right, and let me go at it from this perspective as well. You know, somewhere it's written about be ye therefore transformed by the renewing of your mind.
Right.
I think that the first step in the process is the person has to make a commitment that he or she is going to make an investment in themselves to begin to change their lives, to change their thinking, to change their acting, to change their way of being, to change their friends, and to change how they respond to the community stimuli. Because you can't necessarily take everything out of the community that's going to be there when they return, but you can help them to build up internal capital that will help them to withstand those different odds and behavior once they do return. And then once the person begins to make the personal commitment, then it's the family system that have to be involved with that. And then it's the system, the community at large. And that is where we try to change policy and legislation and try to break down some of the barriers that keep them from having access to employment and to going back to school and to having vocational experiences, so that we break down the barriers through laws, through legislation, through changing policies. That's why I co-chair Congressman Davis's criminal justice advisory committee, and Congressman Davis is the chief sponsor of the Second Chance Act, one of the most historic pieces of legislation that have been passed, I think, since I've been around, that will go a long ways toward putting resources. Just this last year here, there was about 7 grants that was awarded in Illinois, most of them in the Chicago area, where agencies and organizations have received funding to begin to build that capital so they can have resources where they can go out and come to organizations and get the support. But it's critical that we also look at ways to create a shift in public opinion about men and women. If the public don't change their attitude, I remember when Dr. King speech in 1963, I read about what he thought one of the charges was that he had to do, and he says that one of the charges of the movement was to create a shift in public opinion.
Public opinion, yes.
And public attitudes. And the public attitude, I believe, is the biggest stumbling block for men and women having an opportunity to take that transformation and that renewing of their minds and put it into action when he comes back to their respective communities. And that's the work that we do, that we love doing, to help creating that change in community at the policy level, at the employment level, at the family level, and at the individual level, so that they can have that opportunity to come back and take their rightful places in their respective communities. I believe this here, and I had this said to me by a person when I was incarcerated over in the Cook County Jail. This guy came in, and it was one of the religious services, and he came in, he walked in, and he said, "Let me tell you something." He says, "I believe that in life, you can find what you're looking for, because what you're looking for is looking for you.
That's right.
If you change your thoughts, you change your world."
Change your world. That's right.
And I tell you,
Now,
that was a profound revelation for me.
I am a firm believer that if you change your thinking, you change your world.
Absolutely.
I am a firm believer in that what you believe to be true for yourself is what you will find. That's
Absolutely.
what you will live.
Absolutely.
And I work with people who aren't incarcerated to get them to rethink what is possible for them. That is incredibly difficult for people who work every day, they have a reasonable amount of success, but they want to change their lives, and they're not looking at a criminal record or having to face explaining where they were for those last 8 years and nobody knew what they were. So how do you get people who have been incarcerated, who are up against many more odds, to consider the fact that they are what they think they are?
Right. See, that very person.
And after this, we've got a caller that's waiting.
Right.
So
that
we'll
very
take the
person
caller.
or that very situation that you just spoke on, that is in them. I think that it's opportunities that present themselves to help them to get in touch with that and believe in themselves. When they have role models such as the three of us sitting here, such as yourself, such as the family structure, such as your neighbors and community, those are the things that help them to motivate and go within and get in touch with that person. And I call it the Truth Center.
Okay.
We all have a Truth Center.
That's right. We all
I
have
don't care
one.
who we are.
That's right.
We have that Truth Center. And regardless of where what we do, we know that we need to do something different if that's something that we're supposed to be doing. And so I try to go to that Truth Center in someone and help them to get in touch with that and begin the change process within themselves.
That's right.
Yes.
We have a caller on the line. Are you still there?
Yes. I'm enjoying the conversation and where it's going. I got a brief, quick question. That sounds good what you guys are saying, but what happens when a member gets released from incarceration and he can't return home because there's an ex-offender that already lives in the house, or maybe an ex-offender on the block, and he can't be there because he doesn't want to be associated with other known felons and things of that nature?
And he can't get Section 8 housing because he can't move there. So what happens?
I believe
There are transitional housing programs that will provide that necessary housing. I think there may be, there are several situations that create barriers to housing, but there are programs like Safe Haven, other transitional housing. Safer has a housing program that person can come in and get the necessary housing. And like I like to tell guys when I'm on the inside, to make sure that you get safe housing. Make sure that when you come home that you're not coming home to auntie's house and your niece is smoking rocks in the other bedroom. Make sure you're coming into a safe, drug-free environment. And there are housing options for people who are returning.
I believe in preparation on the inside. I take it back to the inside, beyond a shadow of a doubt. If you know that your brother or your sister is on parole, and you know that it is against your parole to try to parole to that residence, then you start looking for safe housing on the inside. You start to work with family services and the social service department within the Illinois Department of Corrections, and then you see if they can help connect you with safe housing for you.
That's the critical piece right there. You have to take an honest inventory. Most of us know when we can't go back to where we came from. That's that's just honest inventory.
That's right. We
you
know
already
that
know
today,
it.
you know?
I mean, we know this.
That's right.
While we were there, before we went in there, and while we
and you
in
know
there,
that if you've never
you
been
know
in
that.
there.
Yes.
You know
And
you got
so-
a brother and sister doing rocks in the back room. You have no business in there. That's right.
And you know that you got triggers
That's right.
and people's places and things that you don't need to be around.
That's right.
You know, you may have done something that you know you can't go back into that environment about without making some amends. So while you in there, she's absolutely right. Take that honest inventory, take out the counseling and the services, and if you have to, take the transitional housing option because they are available. There's places where you can go other than back into that environment that you know that you can't go in, whatever the circumstances may be. But you got to take an honest inventory. And be true to yourself and go to that Truth Center.
That's right. Go to that Truth Center.
And it's called collaboration. That's why we're here. We're here to collaborate with one another and to link with one another. If Safer Foundation doesn't have a house for you, maybe St. Leonard's has a house for you. If they don't know a house that is available for you, then we're saying let's connect. Let's get on the phones. Let's get the job done. Because we care about the ex-offender that paroles back into their communities.
And
I do care.
Absolutely. And TAS also provides post-release and pre-release case management within the instance.
Okay.
So you got somebody there you can talk to.
You can talk to somebody there.
You got folks coming in you can talk to and take that honest inventory and go to that truth center.
That's right.
And say,
And
I
you-
gotta
you-
go to a
You
different
don't have
place.
to tell your friends
You ain't gotta
inside.
tell, no.
You talk to the people who can help you.
Keep it,
Yes.
keep it very confidential and take care of your business.
That's right. We're going to take a commercial break right now. While we're on break, I want the viewers at home to get ready with your questions and your pencil and your paper, because we will give you contact information from each organization represented here. Stay tuned.
A message in its melody, sweetest lyrics that I ever heard. There's a message in the songs of birds. Tomorrow is another day. Living is the only way. Tomorrow's gonna
We are in your neighborhood, on your street, on your block. We are boys and girls of every age, all colors and all cultures. We are your nieces and your nephews, your brothers and sisters. We are your children.
Before the Chicago Children's Advocacy Center, a child had to relive his or her story in up to 14 interviews with doctors, teachers, school counselors, police, special detectives, child protection agents, and lawyers. Children were brought to numerous locations and were repeatedly traumatized by the system. Now, the system works for them. At the Chicago Children's Advocacy Center, professionals across agencies and disciplines come together under one roof to collaborate. Abused children tell their story one time in a safe environment. Care begins within days, not months. Our specialized programs and counseling help give abused children hope for the future. The Chicago Children's Advocacy Center restores trust once lost.
I think it's important for anyone, any individual out there, any corporation, any foundation, regardless of where you live, is give a contribution to the Advocacy Center, because what you're really doing is you're rebuilding the lives of children in our communities. No child should ever be lost because of an adult action or decision. All of us should rebuild the children's lives and their brothers and sisters in a family situation. So I'd hope that people out there, regardless of who you are, it's a worthwhile contribution to a center that's really lives, both the mind, both the body and the soul of children in our communities.
sang this song to me. There was a message in its melody, sweetest lyrics that I ever heard. There's a message in the song.
Greetings and welcome back to A Sip of Inspiration as we celebrate our local heroes in the second edition of the Sip of Inspiration. Joining me again, Tony Lowry, Sherelle Abel, and George Williams. And we were having an interesting conversation while we were on the commercial break that I'd like to share with the listeners and the viewers at home. We talked about the honest inventory, the truth center, follow the leader, and how to get real with what's going on in your situation. And this will work for those of you who are listening who don't have a criminal record too, because the problem I think we have is that we are not real in a lot of places. And the children that we are responsible for and that we're role models to, whether we know it or not, our relatives actually follow that as they watch that we are not real and we're not in our own truth center, and that we don't follow that leader inside of us, then they don't follow the leader inside of them. And then they end up incarcerated generally. Some of us just sort of sneak by, but we're all incarcerated in a sense, and that we're not listening and following that voice inside of us. So what are the techniques that you use when you're working with offenders, trying to help them break through all of the barriers of getting real with what their situation is like, and what they're going to have to do in order to literally fight back or rebound from that?
Yeah, well, at TAS, we research some of the evidence-based models that have been successful in terms of, the motivational case management, clinical case management, some of the things that's been successful that we combine with our clinical management services, and sit down and have honest conversations to help folks to understand what their role are, what their rights are, and what their responsibilities are to themselves, to their families, and to their respective communities.
What are some of the questions you ask?
Well, like, how long have you been in this lifestyle? How did you get here? What are,
and at what point?
What are some of the things that you want to do?
At what point does it click that if they're in there, the choice isn't working for them, that they're not very good at that?
But sometimes the process of reflecting back on that as they look at it, that's part of that honest inventory piece. They start to take that inventory and they see, oh man, wait a minute, you know what I mean? I've been in this thing a long time, this is not working. Then sometimes there's a trigger, something clicks in that process, So we use evidence-based instruments, tools, and assessments to help to take a real concrete, make an assessment so that we can help them to, and they are an active part in that process as well, that they're making decisions, that they're answering the questions, they're asking questions, they're getting answers, and then they understand what their next steps are. And we think that that's foundational to them having something concrete that they can use in a treatment plan and so forth, to use concretely with goals and objectives that they then can step to and begin to let their life have that experience.
A big thing that helps me when I'm on the inside, and I do a series of workshops, but the biggest question that comes out is through family reunification. And I ask the men who have children, who have male children, what would your child say about your life? If someone asked a question to your son, being 10 or 12 years old, what would they say about their father today? And when I pose that question, the room gets silent. The thinking starts. And some guys come with, oh, well, he'll say that I'm okay. I say, well, for real? And to try and break through that facade, that machoism and everything, because when you're in a correct setting, there are certain images that must be upheld.
Right.
Because you're on the inside. So in the groups, and then just setting up the rules, what's said in here stays in here. And then just opening that door for that thinking to start really looking truthfully. Because again, I think as we all were saying in the previous segment, is that if I've been to the penitentiary for the 5th time, obviously this career choice is not working. So, but it takes that time, because again, when we come back to communities, and and not to pick on Austin, but using that as an example, that you have 1,500 people returning each year to 2 zip codes is just overpowering.
Well, the approach that we take at Hope Inc. Midwest is that we allow women to be women. Through our assessment process, we present them an assessment and we let them talk about the things that they want to do different for their lives. And decisions that they make during that assessment process, we talk about them. We also have case managers, so they have individual social workers that discuss their assessment with them. We also have a certified substance abuse counselor that does their assessments for the ones that need substance abuse. And with that, the first thing that I encourage them is that your thinking has to change. It hasn't. After 3 or 4 times of re-entry, you know, you have to get tired of the same behavior. If they don't get tired and make a conscious decision that they're ready for change, they will continue to re-enter back into the community of being incarcerated. So I believe that it starts with their determination and what it is that they want to do for themselves first. Then they have to, I believe in structure. I believe in when they re-enter, they have to re-enter into a safe environment. I believe in women re-establishing their relationship with their children. Once they come home from prison and the assessment is done, then we begin to get identification. I want to elaborate on that. It is important that you get identification because it determines to you and society that I am somebody. You know, you take women, we may have 5 or 6 women that come into our organization, and we have a day that we go and we get state IDs after we've gotten a birth certificate, social security card, went through all the channels that we needed to go through. And once they've gotten their state ID, they develop a personality. It starts to build their self-esteem. They begin to know who they are because it's very important that they start with IDs. We want to make sure that they're in a safe environment. If living at home with mom is not the place that we feel that they need to be at that time, through them making a conscious decision, then we look for safe housing for them. Then we address the substance abuse issue, if there is a substance abuse issue. And I believe that 85.5% of the women that are released from the Illinois Department of Corrections have some type of mental health issue or substance abuse issue. Also, domestic violence plays a strong key there. So we address those issues. Then we look at the fact, educational level, because everyone that comes out of prison, we try to encourage them that education is very important. I accomplished a GED, and I think that was a big step in building my self-esteem, allowing me to know who I am and determine in which path that I want to go. Then we look for educational training, job training for these women. So it's a lot of things a lot of paths that we're going to have to cross to get them reintegrated back into society and get them on the right track. It's not an easy process. I would not say it's an easy process. I've been to the Illinois Department of Corrections 5 times before I really grasped the fact that I am tired and I needed to make a change, not just for myself, but for my son.
What are some of the stories, success stories, because you guys been doing this for a number of years now? What are some of the success stories?
Well, you know, we had a client that came through TAS, and we had matter of fact, we had a situation at TAS once at our office up north, was that our lights went off, and he called for an electrician. And so we called this number. I don't know how they came to have this number. And we called this number. The guy came with his trucks and came up and, you know, looked at the situation and said, okay, this gonna cost this, blah, 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 blah. And he gave us a price. And then in the end, we help you to do that. And then we lay out
I can't read, you need to help me.
We lay out a plan that will help you to accomplish that. And then we follow that plan. And then we can make corrections when corrections need to be made, but that gives us the the nation
Okay.
and the contract to move forth and begin that process.
Okay.
And also, a little small piece I want to add to that. If we cannot provide the services at our headquarters, then we use our linkage and we link them out to the services that are able to provide them with their services.
So no matter where they reach,
yes.
no matter what agency they reach into, you all will make sure that they're connected with someone who can help them.
Absolutely.
If you cannot help them.
Yes.
Right.
They
All
just
that,
need to reach out to you.
all that will be reflected in the assessment and the treatment or the recovery plan that then get created out of that.
Yes.
Okay.
And having patience. Coming home from prison, we want it when we want it. We want it right now. It's a process. Believe that. But I want to speak about number 2. I believe that when you've left the home and you became incarcerated, went to jail, your relationship with your children should never cease. It is important that a child knows, my mother went to the penitentiary. A child may think maybe it was my fault. My mother didn't want to care for me. My mother didn't love me. Because before my mom went to prison or to jail, a child may think, she was never home anyway. And there was a caregiver, my grandmother, or my mother's sister, or there was some family, relative caring for the child. So I believe as a mother, speaking from a woman's point of view, it is imperative that you reestablish your relationship with your children and take on the responsibility of being a mother, if you can, and build upon that relationship during your time of incarceration and continue that relationship when you're released. And this is, I know it works because I did it with my son.
Okay.
My mother was a caregiver for my son. She picked him up from the Illinois Department of Corrections at birth. She cared for him during my drug addiction, and I was not ready to stop at that point. Finally, I made a conscious decision that I was done. But during that process, I continued to build and establish a relationship with my son. It worked. He is now 23 years of age. He graduated from Walter Lutheran High School. I was home to push him through it, but I had to push him, keep him on the right track because of my previous relationship I established with him. And be mindful, I was on a 20-year sentence to the Illinois Department of Corrections. Visits are important, but the number one key to your child being successful that I believe during your time of incarceration is put the pen on the paper. Letters. Don't always call on the telephone. That costs to make phone calls. But as your child grows and develops the ability to read and write, a child will correspond with his mother and his dad during their time of incarceration. And that can also, it's very important, and that can also keep your child on the right track. I believe that.
Employment opportunities for people with criminal records, critical. In this economy, it is very challenging to get opportunities for people with criminal records. Safer Foundation has a long history, 38-year history of providing these services. We have over 300 employers who we have contracted to provide our people with employment opportunities. Each year, we get approximately 2,500 job starts for people with criminal records in the Chicagoland area. We are in 24 locations in the state of Illinois and in Davenport, Iowa. The biggest element that we've seen, and George had talked about best practice models and the research that's necessary to provide important opportunities for people with criminal records, is that employment is the greatest link to decrease recidivism. We've did studies, national studies. We have a great person who does our evaluations, our recidivism studies, and what we've seen is that recidivism in the Illinois Department of Corrections is approximately 54%. At Safer Foundation, when we bring a person in and they receive our job training, job placement, and stay on the job 30 days, that recidivism drops to 12%. If we can get people jobs and keep them working, that's the greatest reduction in recidivism that we have seen. But then there are other challenges that come with that, be it the housing, be it the family support, and all of those things. But employment is the greatest link to decreased recidivism that we've seen in the state of Illinois and around the country.
Right. Just one other caveat to the assessment piece. The assessment tool is a clinical instrument.
Okay.
It's clinically put together and proven to be effective in collecting the right information to get this person into the right pathway. So it's a clinical instrument as well.
But I believe with the employment piece, in their waiting, we all have gifts. We have gifts and we have talents. If you can shine shoes, and I'm putting this out there to all ex-offenders that are coming home, that are in your waiting time for employment, set up a shampoo. If you can do hair, start to braid hair. There's all types of ways that you can make legitimate income for yourself.
We've got another caller that's been waiting quite some time. Are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Hi, you have a question for the panel?
Yes, first of all, I want to know what's the name of the show inspired? I love the name of the show. Sip of Inspiration.
Yes.
Great name.
Thank you.
And my question is for T-Bot,
Okay.
the young lady in the middle.
Yes.
Yes. I agree with you when you said that we should go back to writing letters. I think that's a more intimate way to connect with people, and you can always hold those letters for years, and it can make a difference in people's lives. When you write something down, it takes a lot more effort to write than to just say it. So people really think that you mean what you say. And then I wanted to know if Anthony, I think his name is?
Yes.
Anthony, yes. Are you related to Mike Lowry?
No, not related to Mike Lowry.
I remember reading a story a while back in one of the books about letter writing, and there was an 8th grade teacher that had given her students a letter upon graduation, and it contained things that she loved about them. And years went by. She retired, and there was a multimillionaire died, and when they went through his effects, they found in his belongings this letter that he carried for over 30 years about his attributes. So letter writing is a great way. We've got another caller on the line. How are you?
Hi, how are you? What I want to know is about this RU 486 drug. This is about aborting children. In the penitentiary, do they use that drug to abort children?
You know, unfortunately, we don't know. I'm sure you could probably find the information online. Thank you very much. So now we've established employers. So if there are any employers out there watching, we'd like to encourage you to please contact the Safe Foundation if you're not comfortable hiring ex-offenders on your own. They can guide you through the process. If there are any ex-offenders listening or relatives of ex-offenders, and according to the statistics, we're all related to an ex-offender. Here are the resources available right here for you. Hey, as we come to a close, what are some of the tips that you would like to leave for ex-offenders or families of ex-offenders?
You know, for me, it's that thing again about the truth center.
Okay.
Always go to your truth center and be true to yourself. And then I go back to, if you change your thoughts, you can change your world. That as we find ourselves where we're at, wherever that might be, if we facing a situation, if we're in a situation, or if we're coming out of a situation, we need to understand that we got options.
That's right.
There's options, there's resources, there's support, but to that self, be true to that, and take that honest inventory and seek out that help, and have those conversations with your family. And the family have to not enable, but help them to get to the right places that they need to get to as well. But don't enable that situation. Help to have a breakthrough. And again, I'll say that I believe that in life, you find what you're looking for because it's looking for.
Sure.
One thing that I do find, I hear from a lot of our clients that come through our organization, is that sometimes our family members can be pushy. You got to get up, you got to get out, you got to find a job. And they're trying very hard to find a job. Sometimes that can lead them back down the wrong path. They become depressed. They become disencouraged. We need to motivate them. We need to motivate them.
Tony?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is just understanding that there is an opportunity for you. You can change your life, but the work starts on the inside. Be true to yourself, and you can redo your legacy.
I want to thank you all for taking your time to join me tonight. It was my pleasure. I want to thank the viewers for listening to us again tonight on our second edition of Local Heroes. There was one thing that was said tonight that is incredibly important. If you change your thinking, you change your world. And remember that no matter where you find yourself in this life, there are challenges. There are opportunities to grow, as I would call it. And I want you to embrace those. You embrace those by first becoming real about where you are, who you are, and more importantly, who you want to be. Remember, live the life you've imagined and dream big. See you next time. Okay, don't move.
That I ever heard. There's a message in the songs of birds. Tomorrow is another day. Living is the only way. Tomorrow's gonna ever come. Listen to the words of the song. Everything gonna be alright. Everything is gonna be. Now the trees sang a song to me. He said the birds sang it to the breeze. Just in case I was feeling down and didn't really want to be around. He said the breeze sometimes come with rain, but no life stays the same. Tomorrow's gonna bring a change. The message remains the same.